Everybody, my name is Carla Matusi, and I am a Career Development Coordinator within the Office of Career and Academic Advising at Youngstown State University. So I'd like to welcome you today, along with my director, Justin Edwards. This is the second in a series that our office is doing in partnership with the Alumni and Events Office at Youngstown State University. So our very first lecture, which you may have joined us a little bit earlier in the year in May, was focused on remote work and looking for remote jobs, how to do that, what are the best websites to do that at, and that was very well received. So we thought we would try another topic, and today we're going to be focused on doing something that has to do with LinkedIn. So many of you probably have a LinkedIn page, but maybe you haven't revisited it in a while. So today's lecture is actually going to focus on how to personalize your LinkedIn summary. Now, one of the questions that we often have in our office, because we do LinkedIn reviews and we do resume reviews and things like that, is I want to get my personality across, but I know that I can't share personal information. So this is a very valid concern, and there is a solution to this. So obviously, as you know, remote work has been increasing and the culture of the workplace is also changing, you're going to notice that you can kind of approach showing your personality in LinkedIn. You still don't want to share personal information, but if you think about it, there is a little bit of a distinction between personality and personal information, okay? So for example, personal information may include something like your age, whereas personality may include something like the type of manager that you are, or how you like to interact with your clients, right? So there is room for that, and one of the great places to utilize that is probably going to be LinkedIn, because we're not quite ready to upload photos or show our personality on the resume. In our culture, that's not quite accepted. If you were to apply for an international position, you may notice, or you may be told that sometimes photos are included on the resume. We don't do that as of yet in the United States, but let's kind of now turn our direction to where we do that, and that might be LinkedIn, okay? So the LinkedIn summary. So we're going to be referencing an article written by, I believe her name was Aja Frost from the Muse. So maybe Justin can share that link with us now in the chat room, if he could. And, one of the things that this author talks about is how can you address your personality, show your personality in your summary, but yet also kind of show what you really want people to know about your background, your professional background, right? So there's ways to do this. So how I like to kind of take the focus is when you go to order coffee, right? Everybody has their own personalized way that they like to drink their coffee. So, maybe you can kind of think of it in this way, that your summary flavors the rest of your LinkedIn profile and page. It's going to give the reader a very quick understanding of what type of not only background you have, but what type of employee or person you would be like to work with or be hired as, okay? So the article that Justin just posted, we want to follow along because there's a description of 5 types of summaries in there. And then towards the end, I'm going to include a 6th, which is something that I use on my LinkedIn page. And I like to call that the appointment summary because that's primarily what I do. I work with students and I have several different types of appointments that I have background to do. So the 5 types of summaries, in case you were wondering, they include mission-based personality summary, the short and sweet, the blended, and then the accomplishments, okay? So I'm going to kind of transition here, and I'm going to be reading off some different descriptions of each of them. So if you have access to this and you kind of want to look this up on the computer while we're going through this might be a good way for this to make a little bit more sense to you, okay? So the first one is called the mission-based summary. And this is very interesting. I also refer to this as the politician, okay? So they all have their own little quirks and descriptions, but the mission-based summary is really good because it's big picture. It's for the idealist. It's good for somebody who works in a nonprofit, the helper fields, okay? So if you're like passion driven and you kind of want to work, you know, to solve this problem this particular problem in the world, or you want to be known as the helper of this particular population, this is how you want to approach your LinkedIn summary. So you want to tell a story. And the reason I call it the politician is because, you know, when we think of great leaders in our world, or just people that are well known, they are known for something. They are known for being passionate about something, right? So just a couple examples on both sides of the fence. You would have Ronald Reagan was known as the great communicator. You know, he just had those skills where he could reach all different types of audiences. Former Congressman Jim Traficant, who was known around this area, used to start many of his speeches as, "I am the son of a truck driver." And people knew him as somebody who came up, you know, from a working class family. So when you write your mission-based summary, if this is the type of job or person you are, where you kind of work to solve something, or you are mission-driven or passion-driven, you can share that. So if we look at the first example, it talks about how I help clients find the subject and medium that fits their best unique identity. Then I produce high quality content that meets their objectives, okay? So you're kind of showing a little about what you could do for the company that you'd be working for. The sentence before that talks about him or herself in the form of a story. So every brand has a story to tell. Stories engage, inform, surprise, and delight. And it says, I am the conduit between brand and consumer. So this person has a mission to bring whatever product or company, or in this case, media identity, from the person to the consumer, from the brand to the consumer, okay? So think of yourself in terms, are you mission driven? Are you passion driven? Then you would want to write a summary in that form, okay? So moving on to the second example, the personality summary. So I like to refer to this one as the hook. So in my 20s, I worked at newspapers, locally actually, for the Town Crier and for the Tribune Chronicle. And when I was at the newspaper and I would write articles, the editor would always ask us, what is the hook? What is the interest area? What is somebody going to read that article for? And this is just a very basic rule in journalism as well. You know, what exactly is somebody looking to tell? Because there's not a lot of time. And the hook often takes place in the very first sentence, typically, to kind of draw the reader in. So the personality summary can talk about you as a person, but then you're also going to let the reader or employer know that because you are like this as a person, that will translate into the job, okay? So for example, in our personality summary, the person talks about when they were 21, they climbed Mount Everest, not metaphorically, they literally climbed it, okay? And it said, while I was hiking, I thought about quitting, and that's about the time, but despite the high winds, low altitude, mental and physical fatigue, and trail mix overdose, I kept going. I'm that type of person. And once I say I'll do something, it will happen. And then they go on to say, now I put that perseverance to work. And as a senior accountant manager for Polar, I don't have to climb any more mountains, but I do have to move them. So what this person does is it talks about who they are as a person and how that value system in this particular case of never saying quit translates into work. You hear this a lot with athletes, and this is one of the reasons the proponents for having extracurricular activities such as sports, because you're learning the discipline, you're learning the teamwork. And a lot of times when I have appointments with athletes in my office, they will talk about how, they got up at 6 a.m. to practice, and how that can translate into their new job or their type of work that they're going to be doing, because they have developed that type of discipline. You also hear this a lot with people who were once in the military. They were able to overcome obstacles in that setting, so therefore they could bring that type of work ethic to the job. So the personality summary is good for somebody who's maybe accomplished something in their life, maybe has been driven and dedicated to doing something, and then now they want to translate that into work. The personality summary is also good for newbies, people who really haven't entered the workforce yet. Because think about it, the goal of the summary is to talk a little bit about your background. But if you're brand new, what are you going to talk about? Well, you could talk about perhaps your personal accomplishments, maybe in college, maybe, some from high school. So the personality summary is a really good place for people to begin if they're brand new, such as college graduates, or for somebody who wants to translate their value system, their work ethic, and wants the future employer to know this is the type of employee I will be, okay? So this is a really good place for people to use those skills, the personality summary, okay? So now we're going to move on to the third option. The third option is called the short and sweet summary. So I'm just going to go ahead and read a little bit from this. In this case, the person talks about, I have over 15 years of experience working in data science. Currently, I work at Asana's senior data management, as Asana's senior data manager, improving products and services for our customers by using advanced analytics, standing up big data analytic tools, creating and maintaining models, and onboarding compelling new data sets. It goes on to talk about what they've done previously. The final piece of this summary talks about their competencies, and it actually lists it like that. So it talks about competencies in data science, machine learning, cloud computing, Hadoop, Python, Java, R, and network protocols, okay? So let's take a moment to kind of analyze this particular summary, what it's saying and who this would work best for. So this is kind of what we're used to seeing, right? Especially this is the most closest that you would see to a resume, because it talks about specific hard skill sets or things that somebody in that field can recognize. Now, the positive of this is if you are in a field such as IT, which is obviously the example, or even something like teaching where there's certifications required, and you absolutely have to have these skills in order to perform the job, it makes sense to list them in your summary, because without having these particular skill sets, you probably can't work in that particular role. So this would be good for somebody who has specific skill sets that are required to do a specific job. For example, I also think of a person who's maybe an accountant versus CPA. Depending on the job requirements, if you are a CPA, you might want to list that and all the different types of things that you can do versus somebody who may just have an accounting background, because this is very skill specific. Now, we've gone far enough into this that we could now compare and contrast as to what it does not do that the first two do. For example, our second example, the personality summary, shows a person's values. The short and sweet doesn't really get into that, right? But in some cases, that's not necessary. Our first example, the mission-based, talks about just that, what that person is driven to do. So in our short and sweet, we don't really know why this person is driven to work with Hadoop or Python or Java or their other skill sets. But maybe that's not the essential importance for the summary, right? So it's up to you to decide what is important in your type of field, right? it would be great to use all of the elements in all summaries, but that's not necessarily what's needed. Because remember, there is a time element as to how long a summary should be, number one. And at some point, you have to really try to focus on what future employers need to know, at least in that particular moment while they're reading. I'm going to take a little moment here to talk about big data, because this is a little bit about what this particular example is referring to. And Youngstown State University is currently offering a brand new certificate. And Justin, if you have option to share that in our chat room, now would be a great time to do that. Big data is a big thing. And there may be alumni listening to this that are interested in getting that certificate. I know it's a partnership between the economics and math department at YSU. And if you needed more information about that, there are details to that at the Youngstown State University website. And like I said, maybe Justin is able to post that as well, link to that. But big data, IT, skill sets, this is the kind of information that you find in the short and sweet. Analytics, number of years a person has worked. For example, you see the person wrote, I have over 15 years of experience working in data science. So it's very specific, it's giving information, it's factual, these sorts of things. We're going to be talking a little bit later at the end of this lecture on LinkedIn's Workforce Confidence Index, which is a hashtag that you could follow about big data in the world, the changing world of the workforce right now in our country. So that's kind of a little bit of a teaser as to something that relates to this type of summary. Okay, so moving on, we're going to talk about example number 4, which is the blended summary. Okay, so I kind of like to refer to the blended summary as the manager. And this happens a lot. When you work with people and not necessarily just data or information or products, there tends to be more of an interest for people to know what type of person you are. So in the blended summary, I'm going to go ahead and read this. It talks about, I'm a talent acquisition specialist with an interest in building the most effective workforces possible. For over 20 years, I've been helping businesses find their perfect hires. I also do consulting in compensation and benefits, and new hire processes and company culture. When I'm not on the job, I love hiking with my dog, working my way through every recipe in the family cookbook, and indulging my love for seeing new places. Okay, so we're kind of used to this now. This is something that we've become a little bit more accustomed to in our culture. And it's not unusual to have this, but there's really not a place for it except for the LinkedIn summary, because you're certainly not going to list, the names of your pets on your resume. Our culture doesn't quite go that far yet. There's not a space for it in the cover letter, really. It may come up in conversation during an interview, which would be acceptable, but it's usually at the end of the interview or, before the interview when you're waiting in the waiting room. So this example is great for an HR specialist, or what I like to call, if you're a manager or you're a manager of people, because we could all be managers of things or processes or people. But specifically, if you're a manager of people, the employer may want to know what type of manager you are. So let me give you an example on this. Are you the type of manager that has an open door policy? Are you the type of manager that likes to talk to your employees, excuse me, and wants to have more of that professional kind of relationship? Or are you the type of employer that, is more removed? That's where the blended summary can kind of talk to that. For example, I often say that I'm a holistic career advisor because I encompass not just interests and strengths, but values into the career conversation. The whole person, not just what they were good at in school, not just what they want to do. A true story of a conversation that I had one time is somebody was interested in becoming a marine biologist, but they were very close to their family and they did not want to relocate outside of Ohio. So, we had to have a little conversation about that. Your interest is marine biology, but your values are your family, and you're not really necessarily willing to move right now. So that's why I can call myself a holistic career counselor. If I were to write a blended summary, I would talk about that. I would talk about the type of career counselor I am, why I include the values in that discussion piece, okay? So this is really good for somebody who maybe works with people or others, and it's important that the employer know the type of person they are hiring, not just the skill sets, all right? So moving on to example number 5, we can call this the accomplishment summary. I like to refer to this one as the expert. So this is really good for maybe somebody later in their career who's accomplished a lot. Oftentimes I think of creatives, people who maybe are into the art or music field, to talk about what their niche is in those particular fields. Also useful for people who are trying to get into consulting. If you've hit mid-level career, you've way past entry level, and you're trying to edge from mid-level into that kind of expert level, you can talk about yourself in that way in your LinkedIn summary, and that will start to attract people. Perhaps you want to get into consulting. This would be one way to talk about that, because you could talk about your accomplishments. In this particular summary, it's okay to title drop, to name drop. Perhaps if you're a musician and you've worked under a specific very important performer, or in an orchestra, it's okay to name drop that type of orchestra in this particular summary. And you worked as an understudy with a very accomplished actor or actress, and you want to list that person's name. This would be the type of summary that you can do that. Anything that would bring prestige, or any type of attention that would help you gain that level of expertise. This would be the type of summary for that. So for example, this person put, I'm a freelance multidisciplinary graphic designer who's delivered creative and engaging solutions across brand identity. They go on to talk about who they've worked for. In 2013, my online brand campaign for Dorsey's Children's Hospital won an award, one of the most prestigious honors in the graphic design industry. So as you can see, if you are trying to career pivot, or maybe add, especially as an alumni in that mid-level career, to the consultancy side of work, or maybe a side hustle where you have now developed a specific kind of background in your skill set, and you want others to know about that and to come to you so you could provide that type of expertise. The accomplishment summary will work for you, because that's what it's designed to do. Okay, so the next example that I have is one that I use. It was not one written in the article by the author Aja Frost from the Muse, but it's something that I currently use in my own LinkedIn summary, and that is I call it kind of the appointment based. So what you kind of think of this one as is, if you work with people and there's a specific background that you have, and maybe you do appointments or services, the way I approach my summary on LinkedIn is I don't write it in a sentence form, but I write it in quick summaries of those appointments or services. So Justin, if you have availability to that example number 6, that just kind of shows a photo of my summary from LinkedIn, now might be a good time to share it if you can. But this only works if it's well known, right? Because if I don't know about you, but I don't have a background in coding, so I don't know too much about Java or different other examples of that type of thing. But I do use in my sample something I say resume content writer. So that works because most people know what a resume is, okay? Most people know and understand what a writer is. So I don't have to go into an in-depth description of that versus somebody who may have, again, a background in IT, or I'm even thinking something medical or legal, like a legal person lawyer might have to give a little bit more description. Most people know what estate planning is, but sometimes what lawyers do and medical people do is not well known to the average person, so that may or may not work. But anyways, the appointment type summary works really well if what you do is with people or services, and it's generally understood, so you don't have to do an explanation of it, and it's quick, and people can kind of know your background. I like to think of it as, this is what I know, and here's how I can help you, okay? So these are the different types of summaries that you may want to consider using with LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is very interesting. It's almost becoming a bridge between you and the employer or potential employer, a bridge between the resume and what the HR department is going to see before they meet you in the interview. So it's almost like an agent for you. It's working to help people understand you. It's working to help people get a better idea of your personality without you having to be personal, okay? So because we're talking a little bit about LinkedIn right now, as we transition, I'd like to touch on something called Workplace Confidence Index, because this kind of has to do with, for people who are job searching and they're writing their LinkedIn summaries and updating their LinkedIn profiles, where you can kind of find more information about how people are feeling in the current job search or in the workplace. So LinkedIn is doing something called the Workplace Confidence Index. And basically they're just doing large scale surveys and coming back with big data. And they're releasing articles and information for you to follow. So this sometimes can help inform people's confidence levels in the workplace, how things are changing with remote, are people spending money, which sectors are growing in terms of job postings. So this can also help inform you as you're working on your LinkedIn profile. So I followed it just by entering hashtag Workplace Confidence Index, and you will get automatic feeds that talk about analytics. And this is where I was referring earlier in our lecture today about big data. So, big data is kind of a big thing right now, but there's also a piece to it is, how do you understand big data? And for those of you who like to follow these types of things, this would be interesting for you. So I'm looking at an example right now, which talks about which job functions are best suited to work from home. So LinkedIn did this survey, and it was very specific question. And it came back with like a general summary, and then it broke it down by sector. So what they came back with is 2/3 of U.S. professionals believe that they can be effective while working remotely. However, opinions vary by job function as shown below. Human resources came in at 85%, product management at 84%, marketing at 82%. So they kind of surveyed people in these particular fields and basically came up with the data. I can see that Justin shared an article on one of the very first workplace index survey results that LinkedIn did. And this will give you an idea as the type of information that they are looking for, and the type of information that they are gathering is kind of what's going on right now. It's kind of very timely, so it could be very interesting. And the reason I am bringing that up also is if this is something that you are interested in, YSU is right on the edge of, kind of offering this as a certificate. It's brand new, and we did share the link a little bit earlier. Big data is a great type of skill set that any field, any person in any field can have. And I know that a lot of times in these audiences, we get alumni that are kind of in a situation where they're not necessarily interested in changing careers per se, but maybe they want to do a career pivot. So a career pivot is generally characterized as you're staying within the same field, but you're doing something different within that field. And this may be a great way for somebody to obtain a different skill set. That's another item that is currently being discussed through the Workforce Confidence Index on LinkedIn, which is they surveyed groups of people and they basically ask them, how are you using this time remotely? If you're laid off or you're furloughed or you're looking for work. And a lot of people are using this time to update their skills. So this is also a moment where I wanted to take for, again, our alumni and our current students listening. Youngstown State University offers LinkedIn Learning through your LinkedIn page. Now you do have to use your YSU login information, your password and username to access that. So again, this is a nice service through LinkedIn where LinkedIn Learning partners and the permissions, if you will, are through Youngstown State University. And you could watch short videos or start to get an understanding of different skill sets that you may need to acquire, or that how you can keep yourself updated during this time. I would suggest if you had any questions about that you contact the MOG library. I know on their webpage they talk a little bit more about LinkedIn Learning. I don't really have the technical side to describe that. I just know it exists, and I know that if you're a Youngstown State current student or alumni, you do have access to it. So that, just kind of summarizing the summaries of what we've done today, you want to pay careful attention to how you word them, and because that's going to determine what you're saying about yourself and what's important. So at this time, it might be a good place for us to ask for any types of questions. Again, my name is Carla Matusi, and I'm a Career Development Coordinator within the Office of Career and Academic Advising. And if you have any questions, you could just put them in the chat room. Our director, Justin Edwards, and I are working closely together to make sure that we can answer them for you. If we had any immediate resources, we would share them now. If not, we could always follow up with you. As a general reminder, our office is still doing remote appointments. So if you wanted to schedule resume reviews, or we also do self-assessment appointments, which kind of help people that are in that career pivot mode or job changing mode to rediscover or discover their strengths, interests, and values. We'd be happy to do that. Our office number is 330-941-3515. So you can call that number to schedule an appointment, whether you're a current student or alumni. And also, we wanted to see if anybody had any other particular interest. We have done several of these different topics. So it looks like we do have a question here. As an alum who hasn't used my YSU username and password since graduating, how do I regain access to them? So I would start with the help desk on that. 330-941-1595. The reason I say that is anytime I've had students, whether they're current or alumni, do anything with the password, it's always at least started that question with the tech desk. So that's a good question too. So yeah, if anybody has an interest in a topic that they would like us to address in the near future, please feel free to enter that in the chat room. Something that you feel might help you, something that you've been thinking about that you'd like to know a little bit more about, that's in terms of career. So one of the thoughts that I had would be future topics for lecture series include understanding the analytics of LinkedIn and FlexJobs, which is a remote job search site I talked about in our first lecture series. I could perhaps do something a little bit more on that. If that's of an interest to you, please post that in the chat. Another possible topic might be, what tools can you use to be social while working remotely? You know, there are things out there such as Slack that helps people kind of coordinate in different rooms and things like that we're just now learning a little bit more about. Another topic might be how alumni can reword LinkedIn to pivot into remote work language. So, you know, a lot of times your LinkedIn, you're working remotely, but your LinkedIn information on your page doesn't necessarily address that. So there's certain language you could use, such as member of distributed team and things like that, to kind of help people understand you do have those remote skills. So if that's an area of interest, please let us know that as well. So yeah, if anybody has any other questions, they could post those in the chat room right now. Other than that, we'd like to thank you for joining us today. We hope that this information helped you. And like I said, please feel free to contact our office if you would like to schedule appointments. So thank you again on behalf of myself, Carla Matusi, and our director, Justin Edwards, and everybody within the Office of Career and Academic Advising. And thank you again to Heather at the YSU Alumni and Events page. Thank you.